Hunter Biden getting pardoned for all of his crimes is a perfect example of our two-tier justice system that I have witnessed firsthand, having taught in wealthy communities and poor communities. It's just more of the same. Hello and welcome to the next episode of Cylinder Radio. I'm your host, Will Roosh, high school educator in Los Angeles, and I'm going to be talking about the nuance of Hunter Biden being pardoned. So, for years now, Hunter Biden, who is Joe Biden's son, has been revealed to be an addict. He was getting a whole bunch of good, high-paying jobs in other countries and things like that, even though he was woefully unqualified. And he had gun charges and tax charges, and he was pardoned by his father, the current president of the United States, for those crimes, and then all crimes going back to 2014. So for whatever he did, it's all just gone now. And this is going to upset a lot of people for a bunch of reasons. One is whether or not it was intentional, it appears to be a lack of integrity by our leaders, in particular, our president, because for a long time, this is what was said.
Any possibility that the president would end up pardoning his son?
No.
Well,
I just said no. I just answered.
When would the president pardon or commute his son if he's convicted?
So I've answered this question before. It was asked of me not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, and I was very clear and I said no.
You've said before that the president would not pardon his son. Is that still the case?
Nothing has changed. That is still the case.
And have you ruled out a pardon for your son?
Yes. I said I abide by the jury decision. I will do that, and I will not pardon him.
I could speak for the president, and he said he would not pardon his son.
Does the president have any intention of pardoning him?
We've been asked that question multiple times. Our answer stands, which is no.
So again, maybe he changed his mind, but when you are the president, it's crucially important that people hold you up to your word. Like, your word matters, guys. Like your integrity is really like a fundamental, it's like the roots of who you are. So if you say you're going to do something, are you going to honor that commitment or not? And when people already have so much distrust in the government, in particular with this administration, which is why they chose to go away from everything that has to do with this administration to go towards Donald Trump. A lot of people that said they would never vote for Donald Trump, like me, went there because it was just so obvious that we have been bamboozled over and over and over again, and it just falls right into more of that narrative. Here's where the nuance comes in, because my world is education. So the truth is, you will do what you need to do to stack the deck in favor of your child. So if you have the ability to get your kid a leg up, so you might be able to get them an intern, you might be able to get them extra time on standardized tests like the SATs or something like that. You might be able to get them a better tutor, better equipment, better technology. You're going to do it. You will sacrifice a lot to give your kid an advantage out in the world over other kids. That's in us. That's like evolutionarily, like we're going to protect our kids, our puppies, our foals, or whatever they are, cubs, over the other ones. Because we want our lineage, our genetics to move on and have success. So we all act like that, but we also all recognize that that's not good for society. And this is the conundrum. The conundrum really is, we don't want people in positions of power who are there because they had the deck stacked in their favor. But we will all stack the deck in the favor of our kids. So what do you do? What do you do in that situation? I've taught at an elite private school, and I watched as a lot of the kids of like the very wealthy parents, they just had so many metaphorical get out of jail free cards. They were just like, they could just screw up over and over and over again. And they just, always had someone there to support them. They had good therapists, and they had good doctors, and they had good ed support people. Like, whatever they needed, they got it. And you can't blame the parents, because if you have resources, you're going to want to give those resources to support your child. But I've seen some of these kids that have had everything just like kind of done for them, or a lot of help, let's say, go to elite colleges that they should not have been able to get into, and then get positions in jobs that they should not be in, like that they were unqualified for, or at the very least, less qualified than other people. And when our society is structured in that way, and I talk about this in my Paradox Civics class, like if you structure society in a way where it's the most well-networked, the most well-connected people are in charge of things, that's going to be bad for everyone in that society. Because what you want is a meritocracy. You want people to be at the top who are the best and brightest. That's what we want. And human nature is going to fight against that on an individual basis. So what do you do? So what do you do when the way that we will all act is in conflict with what we all agree is best for society? This isn't easy. This isn't easy, you know? So here's the story. So I taught in East LA before I was at this wealthy school, this wealthy private school. And a couple of years after I left that school, so probably like 4 or 5 years after that school, I got a call, and it was from a former student. He's like, "Hey, Mr. Roosh, it's Ivan. You know, how are you? I got to let you know, I got arrested." Okay, what happened? And I knew this kid. I knew he was a good kid. But what happened? He's like, "Well, my girlfriend broke up with me, so I was just in a downward spiral. I went to the local liquor store, grabbed 2 cases of beer, and ran out. And then the owner of the liquor store chased him down, tackled him, and held him there. And while he was getting tackled, he had a box cutter on him because he was working in a factory. And the box cutter, fell out, got kind of in the mix. So he was facing something like 1.5 or 2 years in prison. And he asked if I could write a letter to the judge. And I knew this kid, and I did write the letter. Now, what I said in the letter was, I've taught in these neighborhoods, and then I've taught in very elite private schools. And if a kid at the elite private school did that, girlfriend broke up with him, feeling down, very normal, thing. This kid was in his early 20s. Robs 2 cases of beer. There is a 0% chance that this kid who lives in Beverly Hills or Bel Air is going to be serving 2 years in prison. It's impossible because their dad is a judge, or their dad, went to law school with the judge or with the DA or whatever it is. Like they're connected. They have access to like the best attorneys in Los Angeles. So they're well networked. Oh, come on. He's a good kid. Just give him a break. And I even said, these kids deserve a get out of jail free card every once in a while too. And if his actions, or he gets arrested and he comes across, your desk again, throw the book at him. And I told this guy that his name was Ivan. I said, "Ivan, look, I'm going to write this letter, but I'm going to tell them if you get arrested again to throw the book at you, and this is your one. You don't get a ton of get out of jail free cards, but I'm going to try and get you one." And because of my letter, he ended up serving only like something like 9 days. So I had a big impact on that. It made me feel good. And since then, the kid's turned his life around. He's in his late 20s now. He's in the military. And I just talked to him, like a week ago. And he's just like, "Oh man, thank you so much. I've turned my life around." Like it was one of those things where just give him a second chance. And they take second chances and they do great things with second chances. But the reality is that if your dad is president, you can get away with doing really bad things. And Hunter Biden did some, pretty egregious things. It's a lot of drug use. It's a lot of, prostitutes. It's a lot of manipulating his position to get more money. All of that kind of stuff is bad. It's all stuff we recognize as bad, but he's going to do it. Now, as far as Joe Biden goes, his son is an addict. But what's really unfair is that if you are an addict to a very wealthy, powerful person, you go to rehab in Malibu. And if you're an addict to someone who works at a factory or cleans the floors in East LA, then you go to prison. And that is an example of the two-tier justice system that I think most Americans recognize. They know this. This is not a partisan thing, by the way. This isn't just because Joe Biden's a Democrat. The Republicans do this too. The people who are nonpartisan but just have power do this because you're going to use your power and your network and your resources to protect your child. And the reality is going to prison is not good for you. It's Not good for you in so many ways. It's not good for your mental health. It's not good for your employment, your employment future, your employment status and stuff like that. It's hard to, get a job when you've been a jailbird. So we're in this really sticky situation, and I don't know the answer to it, but I think that the biggest core that we need to pull away from this is maintaining the same standards regardless. That's what the 14th Amendment is all about. It's equal protection under the law. The idea that all laws apply to all citizens equally. And you can manipulate that in certain ways. Okay. And that's how they get around it, because you could say, like, if I would play LeBron James in basketball, like, the same rules of basketball apply to both of us, but he just has more resources. He's 6'8", 300 pounds, been playing basketball his whole life, So you could say, like, well, everyone gets access to an attorney, just some get access to better attorneys or something along those lines. But this is really where equity, which has this, like, really ugly stigma of equality of outcome, but it's not really, it doesn't have to be that way. It's really about fairness. And what you want to do is, if one kid can have the lights on in his house and a refrigerator full of food and access to a laptop, and another kid doesn't have any of those things, one kid is going to be at a severe advantage over the other. And that, what if both kids got laptops, got food, and got lights in their house? Now it's an even playing field. Now who's the best? And that's what we have to really decide as a society to set our society up in the best ways. Because I've taught kids who were like drug dealers in the hood, and they were brilliant, that if they weren't born in Highland Park or Crenshaw or East LA or Compton or whatever it is, Pacoima, whatever it is, if they were born in Marin County, they were born in Silicon Valley in Palo Alto or something, they would be running Google. Like, I know people like this. I know people in the Filipino community that are immigrants that, like, I knew a plumber in the Filipino community, because my wife's from the Filipino community, and he invented things. This is years ago. He was a plumber, and he invented something that shoots, like, compressed air to get out clogs and stuff. He, like, made it himself. Like this is something that if he was given good engineering software and tutelage and an apprenticeship and stuff like that, who knows? He might be a top engineer at Google. But instead, he's a plumber driving around in a 1992 van doing work for very, very cheap. And we don't want that. We want the brilliant people to be in the positions of power. So where equity really should be is not taking away from the elite. It's making sure that everyone has an even playing field so we can really tell who are the best and brightest. There's an excellent film called The Mind of Mark DeFriest. I tried to get Mark DeFriest on my podcast. He's still in prison, but it's a story about this guy who is a super genius. He's like on the autistic spectrum, but he's a super genius. He can look at a key and memorize the pattern and make the key out of, like, burnt magazines and stuff. And they called him the Prison Houdini. I highly recommend the movie. They call him the Prison Houdini because he's just broken out of tons and tons of jails and prisons over his life. And he spent a lot of time in solitary confinement, but he created a radio out of just, like, spare metal parts and stuff like that. He created a radio that he kept up his butt. So he was in solitary confinement for years, and he got to listen to the radio that he created out of nothing. I mean, this is like someone that you would want to be, right next to Elon Musk running Tesla and SpaceX. But instead he's in a prison because he was poor in Florida. And when his father died, he wanted to leave him his tools, and he loves tools. So he went to go get the tools, and his stepmother called the police, and he got arrested. So he got arrested. He was only going to serve, a couple of months or something, but then he broke out. And then he got arrested again, and they tacked on charges for breaking out, and they broke out again, and they tacked on charges, and they broke out again, and tacked on charges, because he was just so smart, he could just keep breaking out. But Mark DeFriest is someone that you don't want in a jail cell. It's a waste of brilliance. It's a waste of resources for our society. And I think that we can pull all of this from the Hunter Biden thing. Hunter Biden should not be in a position of power. He shouldn't. Okay? There's nothing wrong with, like, getting a 9-to-5 at the local grocery store or something along those lines. There's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of pride you can have in your job, bringing light to people as you check them out or something. Maybe he should be there. And the person running energy companies should be someone like Mark DeFriest, or should be someone like these drug dealers that I was teaching in East LA, because maybe they'd be better. And I think we can pull that from this story of Hunter Biden. And I think it's a real problem. I think that there's a problem with the integrity of our president. There's a problem with the two-tier justice system. And there's a real problem with the inequitable using that word properly, the inequitable distribution of resources for people in society. So thank you for listening. I hope this, adds some clarity and some things to think about as you kind of mull over this situation with the Hunter Biden pardon. So thank you for listening. If you want to have deeper conversations, please email me at cylinderradio@gmail.com. I have a private discussion group called the Paradox Roundtable where we pull all this apart, and it's going 24/7 with a whole bunch of different viewpoints. I love having conversations with people. Unfortunately, social media just doesn't allow for a whole lot of that. So I made my own thing with the Paradox Roundtable that you can check out. So you can email me at cylinderradio@gmail.com. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode.